Hello, well, it's lovely to be here with you today. I was reflecting how that often with Homeshare, you don't always get that long to talk about it. So often you'll just get 10 minutes in a meeting to talk about Homeshare, and you have to kind of rush through the presentation. So it's really nice today to have a really good chunk of time to explore what exactly Homeshare is, what the model is, how it works, a bit of the history, and also how it's working in Wales and what's happening here. So it's great that we've got that time to do that. And also we've got a video a little bit later on from one of our Homeshare ambassadors. So somebody with lived experience of Homeshare, which we're going to share with you as well, and have some time for questions as well. So a little bit about me. My background is from the tenancy support side of things. So I worked in housing support for many years, worked in a large housing association, and during that time, starting as a support worker, working with older people living on their own, working with younger people living on their own, seeing some of the struggles and the challenges that they have, whether it's just about managing their homes and their tenancies, or about dealing with isolation. So coming from that background through to Homeshare has been a great experience for me, and I'll talk in a little bit about why Homeshare meets some of those issues that are so prevalent at the moment. I need my clicker, so I should have grabbed that first. I've got my clicker. Let's hope this works now. So I'm going to start off by asking a couple of questions. You don't have to answer them, just for you to think of some answers in your mind.
Right, let's try again. Okay. Yes.
Yes, fantastic. That's the first hurdle over with. We've got the technology working, right. So just three questions for you to consider before I give you the answers. So we do an annual review every year of the Homeshare programs throughout the UK. We're still working on the figures for last year, but if we go back to 2021, how many people do you think benefited from living in a Homeshare arrangement, a Homeshare match in 2021? So think about that one. And then moving on from that, in 2021, how many hours of support do you think were provided to the householder, that's the older person, by the home sharers? So all those matches combined together, roughly how many hours of support do you think were provided? And the last one, at the time of the annual report being compiled, what was the longest Homeshare match at that point in time? So I'll give you a couple of moments to think on those questions and have some answers in your mind, and we'll see if you're anywhere near what the answers are. So here we go. So in 2021, there were 1,126 people in the UK living in Homeshare matches. So that's a mixture of the home sharers and the householders. And there was, and I think this figure is astounding, there was 196,000 hours of support provided through those matches. So that's how much support the older person, the householder, is receiving from the home sharer. If you spread that across 196,000 hours, which, as I say, I think is quite astounding. And at that point in time, when the report was compiled, the longest running match was 5 years and 2 months. We were talking internally within our team, trying to remember what's the longest one we've had, and I believe we've had one that's lasted as long as 7 years as being the longest match that's been in place. But at that time, it was 5 years and 2 months. So it gives you an idea of how long Homeshare matches can last for. So that's where we were. So I'll take you through what I'm going to cover today. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the evidence of need. Why do we need Homeshare, and why do we need Homeshare now? I'm particularly thinking of Wales. So we're also going to ask the question, well, what is Homeshare? We're going to have a look at a brief overview of how it works, what it's all about, what it's trying to achieve. Then we're going to talk about the history of Homeshare, which I think is quite important. Some people still think it's a new idea. It's not a new idea. It's been tried and tested. It's just new to Wales, which is why we're shouting about it. So I'll talk a bit about the history of Homeshare, go into some of the mechanics, what happens in the background, how does it work in practice. Then I'll talk about how Homeshare in Wales, how that it's come to Wales now, what support is in place for providers, and then talk a bit about the organisation I work for, which is Shared Lives Plus, as part of the Homeshare UK team, and what we do and what support that we provide and how we work as an organisation, and also why Homeshare is very much linked to the ethos of why we exist as an organisation and what we do. So I'll touch on that. We're then going to show a video of Emma, who's our Homeshare ambassador. So as an interview I did a little while ago with her, a question and answer time. We were hoping she'd be able to be live with us, but unfortunately things conspired that she wasn't able to. But we've got a very good interview where I asked her about her experience of that lived experience of Homeshare. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So anything I haven't covered, you can ask me at the end of the presentation. So that's what we're going to cover. So these are the particular issues that we're facing at the moment. It's not exclusive to Wales, but these are some of the reasons why Homeshare is so relevant right now. That we know that there is an issue with social care. You only have to watch the news to find it coming up almost nightly, talking about social care, the issue with budgets being squeezed, the issue with the lack of workforce, not being able to recruit people into those social care posts and roles. We also look at the potential demand on services as well, particularly as we see people living longer, which is great, which is something we want to encourage, and it's also then how that service, how the social care services can meet those needs, and also things again that we hear about in the news, people not being able to return home from hospital. There being delays in coming from hospital, going home because the support isn't there, and sometimes that's not always having care going in, but sometimes that's because people have maybe lost their confidence or don't feel able to live on their own anymore. And that's an example again of where Homeshare can come in. We also know that there's a demand on housing. Back in 2018, there were 66,000 households on the waiting list for housing in Wales. So there's a massive need for housing. We know that there's a commitment by Welsh Government to build more homes. But when you're looking at 20,000 affordable homes against that 66,000 people on the waiting list, you know that there is an issue of people being able to find good, affordable, quality accommodation, which is something that our home sharers are looking for. So that's another reason why Homeshare is very relevant. Living alone, we know this isn't an issue that only faces older people. We know younger people as well particularly struggle with living on their own. But looking at some of the stats, Age Cymru in one of their reports in 2014 said that 75,000 older people in Wales always or often feel lonely. That there's an increased risk of early death due to loneliness and isolation. That the impact of isolation on people's health is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So that has that physical impact due to the mental well-being of people, not seeing somebody or not having quality contact with individuals in their community has a physical impact on them. Looking at house prices, so we've seen in the last year or so house prices rising dramatically, gone up 20% in parts of Wales in the last year, which was the highest growth in all of Britain. So house prices rising dramatically, people being priced out of their own communities, not being able to afford homes where they've grown up, where their families are, We've seen that around Wales, particularly in areas of tourist population, being a particular issue. And if you go back to 1997, I'm not sure why 1997. I don't know if it's to do with the devolution or anything like that, but figures for average house prices back in 1997 were 3 times the average wage, whereas now it's around about 6 times the average wage. So being able to get on the housing ladder compared to going back to 97 is very, very difficult. And as part of my role, when we started, we did a feasibility study looking at different areas and how difficult it is for people even to get on those starter homes. Younger people on low wages, not being able to afford the massive deposits that they would require even to access a mortgage. So we've got issue of rent, but also we've got issue of affording mortgages. And the final one, which links obviously with the cost of living, which we've got at the moment, is in-work poverty and poverty in general. But according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, we did a report in 2020, so prior to lockdown, it said that 1/4 of people in Wales were living in poverty. Wales has the lowest pay for every sector compared to the rest of the UK. So some really sad figures here, I'm afraid. That we've talked about house prices, but also rent prices, and even social housing has become unaffordable for some people within Wales. And we've got the highest in-work poverty rates outside of London. So London has the worst in the UK for in-work poverty. Wales is second in that list. And according to Cardiff University, fewer than half of the personal care workforce in Wales earn the real living wage. So that's the sad news. The good news is that's why Homeshare is here to address some of those issues. So what does that all match up about? What does that talk about? What does that mean? Well, that covers 2 groups of people here. It covers those people that are affected by lack of social care. It affects those that are living alone. So in general, we're looking at our householders, our older people, and then the lack of affordability of accommodation. That in-work poverty issue is those are the kind of things that would face our home sharers, those people that are looking to have somewhere, a good quality home, good quality accommodation, those people that would be willing to give some of their time in order to receive that. Which leads us on to what is Homeshare? So Homeshare is where you have 2 people, so 2 unrelated people, they might not know each other before, that are willing to share their lives together, that are willing to live together, and both of them gain from that relationship. So from the perspective of the householder, the older person, somebody that maybe has got a spare room in their house and they think, you know what, I don't want to live on my own, or actually I'm finding it a little bit harder managing on my own, and I would really benefit from having somebody here, somebody that can, the one phrase that comes up a lot is someone I can hear that key in the door, and you'll hear that a few times through the presentation today. Somebody having that reliance on maybe having an overnight presence with them, or even somebody just to sit and watch TV with them, or to have, eat their meals together, or to pop into town or do a bit of gardening, do the shopping for them. So that low level support, and then you've got the home sharer, who is that person that's looking for affordable accommodation, but again is willing to share their time, share their lives with somebody else and provide that support. So we say, we advise it's around about 10 hours of support a week is what the home sharer is giving. And I say that, but it's got to be low level, and I'll explain why later on. But both have something to receive and both have something to give. And for me, that is the wonderful thing about the model. It's not just one person gives and the other receives. Both are giving, both are receiving, and they're sharing their lives together, which is really important to us as an organisation. And one of the phrases that Emma, our home sharer, uses a lot, whenever I speak to her, she says it's a win-win. So win-win for both. And that's one of the things that she will always say, and she'll say it in the presentation later on. So rather than me talk about what Homeshare is, I do like to show this video. So this is where our first test of technology after the clicker working. So I'm really hoping this is going to work and that you can hear it. But this is Florence and Alexandra both talking about their experience of home sharing in London.
I'm 95 years old, partially sighted, and I have a housemate who is 27 years old.
Hi, I'm Alexandra, I'm 27, I'm a student living in London. I moved here in September and didn't know anybody in London really.
I wanted to do it because I was very lonely and because I think we all need companionship. In a way, it was quite frightening because you don't know, are you going to fall? Is something going to happen to you? Also, you're bored to tears. You are used to leading an active life, and suddenly there is nothing. My husband had died. I'm a widow. My children had married and gone away. So it's very important to have somebody coming into the house, somebody to talk to, and instead of sitting here looking at four walls and thinking, what am I going to do now?
I mean, on a completely practical level, it's been important for me as a way I can come to London and do my studies. But on the other things that I've got out of it that I wasn't necessarily expecting is, you know, I have a new friend, somewhere that I can feel safe and not isolated in a really big city.
I would just call you a friend. If anybody asked
Good
me,
friend.
yeah, I wouldn't say, oh, I'm her home sharer.
You cannot believe the difference that it makes. Just hearing somebody in the house, and to me now, to hear the key in the lock round about 6 o'clock at night is wonderful.
So that's Florence and Alexandra explaining it much better than I could ever do. And I just love the honesty in that clip there when you've got Florence saying that bored to tears. You know, it's not that as people get older, they don't want to do things that they used to do anymore. They still want to stay active, still want to do things. And that idea of just being stuck in four walls, but the difference of having somebody to share that space with, share that time with, was amazing for her. So I always like to show that clip. So a bit of the history of Homeshare. When you first start talking about Homeshare, there are some misconceptions about it. As I touched on earlier on, sometimes people think it's a new idea, that it's some kind of newfangled idea that's not been thought through properly and all that kind of thing. So I sometimes see those comments, particularly on social media. But the fact is, it's been around a long time, and it's new to Wales, but in terms of globally, it has been around a long time. So as you can see from the top of the slide there, it started in the United States back in 1972, so over 50 years old now. And it was started by somebody called Maggie Coombe, who was the founder of the Grey Panthers, which I love that, the Grey Panthers. So at the time of the Black Panther movement, Maggie was somebody who was forced into retirement. So the organisation she was working for, she hit retirement age. She didn't want to retire, but she was forced into retirement, and that act in itself was enough for her to form the Grey Panthers movement, which was an activist group of older people. And she was really keen on intergenerational models of working and living and sharing lives together. And Homeshare was one of the models that she came up with. So it's not new. It's been around since 1972. So it existed in the USA for some time, and then it came over to the UK in the 1980s. So it was brought over by Nan Maitland. So Nan was an occupational therapist, and she could see the benefits that practical support and companionship could bring to isolated older people. So she saw that model and she brought it over. Equally in Europe, it seemed that Homeshare was developing quite independently of what had happened elsewhere. So it developed in Europe as well. Very, very popular, as we heard in that video, with students. So there are some models over there in Europe where, you know, it's very much around the student population, and we do have some of that in the UK as well. So that kind of developed slightly in isolation, but it was in effect the same model. So when it came over to the UK, around about 2000, there were only a few providers. So there were some small providers that started delivering Homeshare, a handful of them really, but one of those programs is still going today. So if you have the question of, well, you know, are these programs sustainable? Well, Homeshare West, which covers Bristol and Bath, started in the early 2000s and is still running now. So it is a sustainable model. And again, around about that time, these programs had started up, and they really felt that they would benefit from having a network to be able to share what's working. It was still very new to the UK. They wanted ways of being able to engage with each other. So that's where the organisation I worked for was brought in. So at the time they were called NAPS, and they were brought in to bring together the small network of 7 providers that existed, to kind of give them some support, to give them some framework to working. So that was the start of the Homeshare network. But then in 2014, 2015, Shared Lives Plus were able to invest more into developing the existing Homeshare network, but also developing more programs as well. So bringing on board more providers to deliver those services. So after that initial 7 providers in 2015, from then onwards, we've grown to having over 20 providers now in the UK. And 3 of which are in Wales, which I will come on to a little bit later. So that's the history of where Homeshare comes from. So no, it's not a brand new idea that somebody thought of on the bus on the way to work. You know, it's something that is tried and tested. It's been run around the world. It's been run in the UK for a long time. I say it might be new to Wales, it might be new to some people, but it's a model that has been around for a long time. So what is it then? What is we've heard from people involved in it, but what are some of the key characteristics? Well, as you can imagine, the top most priority, well, I'd probably say there are 2 priorities, but in terms of a sustainable match, it's getting 2 people together that are going to enjoy each other's company, that are going to enjoy living together, that are going to maybe have some shared interests, some similar backgrounds, a similar outlook, enjoy doing some of the same things. So brokering that relationship is really important, and that is a major part of the role of the coordinator, is finding 2 people that are going to enjoy their time. And a phrase I stole from one of the providers in England is, it's finding the right person for the right person. And I think that's the best way to sum it up, really. So a big part of Homeshare and the practical elements are finding people that are going to live together well, but it's also then monitoring that relationship. And that's where the other priority comes in, which is safeguarding. And again, I'll talk more about that later. But monitoring the relationship, is it working out in general? Are they enjoying living together? Is it working? Is it okay? Is it safe? Is it effective? So that is something, again, that the Homeshare provider will do as part of their role, and be supported by that Homeshare provider to do that. So between them, the home sharer and the householder will agree, well, what exactly support do they need? So what does the householder need support-wise, and what is the home sharer happy to give? So it's a matter of matching those two things up together. So that's important that expectations are managed right from the onset. You don't want somebody to be living somewhere for a few weeks or a month or so, and then suddenly say, well, I thought you'd be doing this, or I thought you'd be doing that. So having a home share agreement in place is really important. So having that, agreed what that support is. So it's generally, as I said before, 10 hours of support. So having that agreed what that will look like in that match is vital to its success. One of the really important things is no personal care can be delivered as part of home share. Sometimes, and I've seen it on social media, people talking about it, say, oh, it's just a cheap way of getting live-in care. It's like, well, actually, no, it's not, because the one thing a home sharer cannot do is personal care. Personal care can sit alongside a home share arrangement. There are plenty of matches where there is a personal care package going in, but the home sharer can only give low-level support. So that everyday stuff, your cooking, your cleaning, your gardening, those are the kind of things that you can be delivering. If people start delivering personal care, you get into the whole realms of it needing to be a regulated service. You got all those kind of things involved. Home share as it isn't a regulated service because they're not delivering personal care. So as I said, getting a good match is really important. That's a real key priority. We've covered that. The money side of it. So there isn't rent involved. It's not a rental agreement. So they don't. So the householder doesn't charge the home sharer rent, but they might contribute to the bills. So they might contribute to utilities, and particularly if there might be things that they require. So maybe you've got somebody that's working from home, or maybe it's a student that needs broadband, and say that the householder doesn't have broadband, so they would they would pay for that themselves. But equally, they might contribute to the gas and electric and things like that. And these are all things that are agreed right at the beginning of that arrangement. So whilst they don't pay each other in that way, what makes home share sustainable is that they would pay the home share provider a fee to be part of the program. So that's where that's what makes it sustainable. So from the perspective of the home sharer, it's obviously a lot cheaper than paying rent for a similar arrangement. So if they were having even if it was a single room flat, looking at the different areas, they would easily be paying double than that. So it's not a rental agreement. And equally, some providers charge the householder, some don't. But again, if you look at things like if the householder currently pays a cleaner or a gardener, or somebody to walk their dog, or is needing to pay for taxis into town, it soon adds up, and it can be still can be a saving by being part of a home share arrangement in that way. So there is that element. I can't quite see the last one, and my Welsh isn't that good. Oh yes, so all participants are assessed and checked. I'll talk about safeguarding in a moment, but that's really important, because that's one of the things that people often ask about is it safe? And we will talk about that. So the process is that somebody would contact their local provider and say, I want to be a home share, I want to be a householder. Very often it's family members of householders are often people that realise, mum or dad is beginning to find it difficult living on their own, or as we heard in the video, maybe mum or dad has lost their husband or wife and finds himself living on their own, possibly for the first time ever, and doesn't want to live on their own, which is understandable. So often it's family members are the ones that kind of would come forward and say, you know, we'd like to refer, you know, mum or dad to your program. And having family members on board is really, really important. And they're a really good link. And when we hear from Emma, she will talk about that as well. So there's that initial contact. You then have an application, so you could fill in a form and have an interview. So some of this is around, particularly on the home sharer side, or equally potentially on the householder as well. It's what is the motivation behind people? You know, why do they want to be involved in a home share match? What are they expecting to get out of it? If all they're looking for from the home share is they just want cheap accommodation, then that could be a red flag to say, actually, this isn't going to work for them. It's the sociable living arrangement is really important, and they need to really understand that's what it's about. The affordable accommodation is a benefit of the model, you know, but it's really important that people understand it's about sharing that life together. It's not just about having a room that they can hide away in when they're in the house. It's about sharing that time and that space. So those are some of the reasons why having that interview is really important, to be able to say, you know, you understand what it's about, you understand the model, is this something that you're on board with? So it's important to do that. When they get through that stage, there's also the safeguarding, which is the next slide, I believe, so we'll talk about that then. So part of that process is safeguarding checks. But then once you have two people that you think, you know, you think these are going to like each other, we think these are going to be able to live together well, then it's about matching, meeting them up, getting a chance for them to meet each other. So it might be meeting somewhere neutral, like in a coffee shop or somewhere out and about. It might be that the householder says, well, I'm happy for them to come around, or I want them to come around, but I want my family to be here. So it's done in a way that is comfortable for everybody, but a chance for them to meet and to get to know each other before they enter into any form of agreement. In Homeshare UK, we're actually delivering a few programs in the north of England ourselves for the first time, but they will float off as separate entities eventually. But there's been some lovely stories where the matching meetings, you know, you'll have the coordinator and the family there, and the householder will turn to the home share and say, do you want me to show you around? Do you want to come and see the house? And they'll go off together and go and look around and kind of leave the meeting behind them and go, come, let me show you around. Let me show you the garden. And it just goes to show how those matching meetings are so important, but getting to know each other and getting to be, you know, confident and comfortable with each other. So once you've had that meeting, then it's about the agreement. So as we talked about earlier, sitting down, being very clear about expectations. What kind of support is the householder looking for? Is it just the companionship? Do they just want somebody to have their meals together with and watch a bit of TV with? Is it that they want somebody to do a bit of shopping or cooking or gardening for them? You know, is it, what exactly is it they want, and what is it that the home share is happy to give? So you'll agree that at the beginning. Then there's a trial period of roughly about a month usually. Again, they'll agree that, but it's usually a month, just to there's any teething problems, anything to work through, any issues, then that's where the coordinators come in and help to support that period, but usually about a month. And then hopefully everything will be fine, and then the home share coordinator will provide ongoing support for the life of that match. So it might be initially weekly visits, it might turn to monthly visits, telephone support, but being able to touch base every so often, is everything still okay, is everything going well, and also from a safeguarding perspective, just being clear that everything's still working safely. Which leads to safeguarding, so something that we take very, very seriously within home share. Ultimately, we're matching two people together. There's a responsibility on the home share provider to make sure that's done safely and effectively. So what we do as Homeshare UK is we provide a good practice guide. So any members of the network have access to documents and policies and templates that we've provided and developed over years and years of working with the network, finding out what the good practice is, how it should be run, how it should be done safely. We also have a quality assurance framework that organisations can use to test and check that they are delivering the Homeshare model in the way that that we believe is best for it to be run. There are checks as well, so we do reference checks as well as DBS checks, or references that we take out on home sharers and householders, just to make sure that people are suitable. So we'll do that, and that sits alongside the DBS checks as well. DBS checks are always done on the home sharers. Depends on the programs whether they'll do checks on the householders as well. Some do, some don't, and that's the whole area we're discussing at the moment. But DBS checks are always taken on the home sharers. And then there is that ongoing support with the householders and the home sharers, just to have that monitoring of the arrangement. Is it safe? Is it effective? And using those visits and using the contact with the family members to you know, is there been any changes? Are they okay? Do they seem happy on either side? So those are really big parts of ensuring that the model works well. So that's the why, and that's what it is. That's the mechanics of how it works. So a little bit about home sharing Wales. How has it come to Wales? Well, we were really fortunate as an organisation. We looked at how things were developing in England, in the UK, and looked at Wales, where we've got a footprint with our shared lives programmes, and thought, you know, we really believe that home share would work in Wales, and there's a real evidence for it. So we were able to go to Welsh Government and apply for funding, and we got funding for 3 years, which was basically to develop three pilots, 3 programs. So it was at that time I was brought in to the organisation. So I've been with Shared Lives Plus for nearly 2 years now. So we're kind of 2 years into the 3 years programme. So as I said, the idea was to identify 3 organisations to deliver home share throughout Wales. So the first year of my role was talking to as many people as possible about home share, about trying to encourage people to come forward and say, yeah, we want to do that. We wanted to deliver those programmes, and look at getting to a point of sustainability. So as I mentioned earlier, it's funded by home sharers and householders, so it is a self-sustaining model once you hit a threshold of matches. So trying to get the providers to a point where they're, you know, looking at sustainability. So the 3 organisations that we worked with, SCVS in Swansea, and they developed the Shared Home Swansea home share programme, and we have today Ruth with us, who is our home share coordinator for Swansea, so the people in the room can see Ruth. So it's lovely to have her today. So Swansea were the first on board, but Ruth has only been in post since December, so working to identify householders and home sharers. Then further west, we worked with the Pembrokeshire Care Society, who they mainly deliver a lot of tenancy support work. So they're used to dealing around homelessness and supporting people in accommodation. So they were very well placed from a home sharer side of things. So they have developed Pembrokeshire Home Share, and their coordinator Dean has been in post since last summer. And the last to come on board is Rhaglenni Cartref Gwynedd, which is run by Cyngor Gwynedd, which is the local authority in North Wales there in Gwynedd. And we were really keen that once we had our first 2 organisations on board and signed up, knowing that they were in the south of Wales, we really felt it was important that we had a North Wales organisation on board. So Cyngor Gwynedd coming on board has been fantastic for us to get a real variety of organisations and pilots working through this, so that we can see how they work and know what works best, and be able to share the knowledge between them. So we have our own mini network that meets monthly, and shares, you know, the good practice, shares what's working, shares what they're struggling with, and works together to make a success of the 3 pilots. So those are our 3 pilots. So a little bit about Shared Lives Plus, which is who I work for. So we're a membership organisation, we're a membership charity, and our see, like I'm covering part of my text there, aren't I? I'm sure I should know this off by heart.
I can move it, but we might lose the clicker.
So that's right. I suppose, yeah. So basically, the organisation exists for encouraging people sharing lives together, create stronger communities by people sharing their lives and their homes. So that's why we exist. So, you know, we have the shared lives model, which is where you would have a host being the person delivering the care, is the person that owns the home. There might be a family home, and they would bring people in that require support, and they become part of the family and they live with them. Is the shared lives model. Homeshare is kind of the other way around. So obviously fits very much with the model that we have. So it made sense that Shared Lives would have a role in developing Homeshare throughout the UK and Wales in particular. So we would love Shared Lives and Homeshare to become mainstream options within looking at the issues that we've discussed already. And a bit about Homeshare UK. So we're a network of over 20 providers throughout the UK. Mixture of types of organisations. Some are charities, like the two that we have. Some are CICs, and others are local authorities, like Gwynedd. There's, as I talked earlier, in 2020, well over 1,000 participants, and Homeshare UK helps providers to set up, get started, deliver those models, and provide things like the Good Practice Guide, Quality Assurance Framework. They're that community of practice. We have different things like I can't remember the name of it now. Online chats and things where people can pose questions. Like, has anybody come across this before? What can we do about this? So yeah, Slack, that's the one, Slack. People pose questions, and we've got this online community. We also meet regularly as well. I'm delivering a safeguarding session later on in the week for the network. So we provide a lot of support for them. We also help with national campaigns that the network want to run and share media opportunities, and also provide those resources and tools and templates for the network to be able to run their programs effectively. So I believe now, if we've got this right, it should be the video. I'm doing for time, okay. So we've got a video from Emma, who's our Homeshare ambassador. She's been in 3 Homeshare matches. It is a little bit quiet. There was a little bit of background noise to start with, but it does clear up about halfway through. I think some fan or something goes off. So you can hear a little bit better. I hope you can hear it well, because Emma is a fantastic advocate of Homeshare, and she will explain it more. The way that we videoed it was so that we can cut and paste it, so that we can take out my questions. So if you wonder why she's repeating the questions, that's why. This is but we'll go on to Emma now. Hopefully it'll work. Okay, so what attracted you to Homeshare?
What attracted me to Homeshare was how it was a great venture for both the homeowner and the home sharer. For my daughter Georgina, who was the first one to do it, it was her being able to feel safe and comfortable in an environment. I knew that she was safe, so I was happy, because I was living in Spain at the time, so many thousands of miles away. So you worry about your children when they're at university and when they're not coping very well, and so this was able for her to have a wonderful, safe environment in a really nice home, and she bonded fantastically well with the homeowner, and it was just great to see.
So what worried you about home sharing, either before you started or when you started home sharing?
What worried me, I think, was making sure that when you were going into the home, that it was a benefit for both, that you were, it's like finding a fine balance. You want to help the homeowner, but you don't want to take over. You know, you want to provide them with the help and support, companionship that they need, and making sure that, you know, you have your own space, they have their own space. So it's always chatting, keeping lines of communication over, always checking, you know, if they're happy, what they would like help with, and the same, you know, vice versa. They would always ask, you know, us as well, if we were happy, if there was anything else they wanted us, you know, to do or help with. So it's always keeping the lines of communication, because you're always worried. You want to help, and you don't want to overstep the mark.
So what type of home shares have you had? Like what environments, kind of urban, rural, etc.?
The type of home shares that I have, I've had 4 now. 2 of them have been in the town, in the centre, and then the others have been rural. So they've been quite nice, quite a nice variety. Obviously in the town ones, you're close to everything, you're close to, you know, all the amenities. So it did make it quite easier to take the homeowner out and about. The first homeowner that we lived with was in a wheelchair, so that enabled us to take them out and about. We used to go into the park, go and get an ice cream in the summer, go out for a coffee and a cake. In the rural areas, we still used to go out, but obviously you needed a car, it was vital. But in the rural areas, you tend to find they have a lot of community with the neighbours as well, so you get to know the extended people in the street. They used to have street parties, and the one that I was in, so everyone would come round, knock on the door. They'd always make sure you're all right, letting you know when the bin days were and things like that. When you first move in, you don't know where everything is. So I've had a variety, and they've both been really, really nice, different experiences with both of them.
So in terms of the practical things, so what are the types of things that you've had to do for and with householders? So
for the householders, the things that I've had to do, for the first couple, they were, the first lady, she was in a wheelchair a lot, so she mainly wanted companionship. So for that, it was generally sitting down, watching the telly with her, reading the newspaper, and also we could take her out and about as well and go and have a coffee. Other ones, generally their help that they wanted was walking the dog. I had one lady who was, unfortunately, she had Parkinson's and she couldn't get out as well, and she loved her dog, but she couldn't take it out for walks that much, so I could do that for her, and I used to video where we went and take photos. And then show her that when we got back. So we would have a chat about where we went and where we walked. And then other times I've taken them to hospital appointments, doctors, you know, for flu jabs, COVID jabs, things like that, out for coffees, to the pub for lunch, taken them to collect family members, all sorts of different things. You would say, you know, what you're happy doing, and the homeowners may ask you if there's something that they need help with, cooking, cleaning, gardening. There's a wide variety of things, or something as simple as just feeding the birds for them.
So how did you get on with the family members of householders?
I got on with all the family members very well. They're really important as well, because they want to feel that their parents or, you know, guardians are, you know, well supported and cared for and looked after, especially if some of them live quite a long way away. They can't always get there when they want to, so to know that you're there at the end of the phone, if there's a problem they can give you a call, or they know that if there's an issue you will call them. So it's just really for their peace of mind, and obviously for the homeowners as well, because the homeowners feel safer when someone's there, especially overnight. So it's a win-win situation really for everybody, and it's so nice. I've got real good relationships with the families. The first lady that I lived with, unfortunately she did die, but her daughter, we're still very good friends now, and I meet up monthly with her and have a chat. So they are really, really important, because they're part of the whole story, because they are normally the people that need the help with their family member. They're concerned and worried about them, so having you there supports them as well as the homeowner.
So what do you think a family member would want to know before their relative became a householder?
I think what a relative would like to know is obviously what support you can give to their family member, because each of the home shares that I've been in have had needed different support. As I said, the first one, she was in a wheelchair, so she just basically needed companionship more than anything else. She had carers that come in a few times. So we were there to sit and chat with her, have a cup of tea, watch some TV, play some board games. We would go out as well, getting ice creams and things. And then other members I've had obviously that needed their dogs walking, they've needed help in the garden. It's just what support that particular person would need and what their families would want for them. Sometimes the families just want to know that their parents are, you know, well cared, looked after, and that they have the companionship and they feel safe and comfortable in their own home, and they're able to stay in their own home for longer.
Do you think there's any concerns that a family member might have before their relative becomes a householder? Yes,
I think concerns that they would have is obviously wondering what sort of job you're doing there. If they don't know about Homeshare, they'll wonder what it is. They might think, oh, you're just going in and staying in the house and you're just there. But it's all explained to them when we come round, or we fill out the form, and we are then asked what they would like us to do. So what sort of support they need for their parents. Some of them just need companionship, someone to be there overnight. Sometimes they don't need someone to take them to appointments, they'll do that themselves, but they just want support for them when they can't be there. So it's just obviously giving them, you know, that confidence that someone is there and that they can trust and rely on should there be a problem.
So how has home sharing helped you personally?
Home shares helped me a great deal. First of all, it helped obviously my daughter. It was absolutely fantastic for her. After worrying about her when she wasn't settling into the climate very well, to see her go into the home environment and home share and just blossom. She had such a wonderful relationship with a lovely Barbara, and they would just laugh and joke and watch telly and, you know, just have a fantastic rapport between them. It was brilliant. And I've had the same with my home shares, just being able to see just the little tiny things that I can do, like I said before, like just going out and feeding the birds, or, you know, taking the dog for a walk for them, just how much joy that can give them. And then that gives you joy because you know you're helping them, and knowing that they're able to stay in their own home where they want to be. You know, they don't want to be a burden to anybody at all. So it's just that sense of joy. It's just absolutely amazing. It's a win-win for both.
And how has home sharing helped the householders that you've been matched with?
The home shares help the householders being able to stay in their own home, being able to relax and feel comfortable and know that they're in their own home, where, especially if they have a little bit of dementia, you taking them out of that environment can be quite confusing for them, and, you know, it can make it worse. So for them to be able to stay at home, they know where everything is, they feel, I had a few of them say to me, you know, as soon as I hear that key in the door, it's like a sense of relief. I know someone's here, I'm not on my own. You come in, you, hi, how are you? How's your day been? You have a chat, sit and watch telly. You know, what do you need help with? Is there anything you need doing? So, you know, they just feel that someone is there for them, that they're supported, that they can still have their independence. They're independent in their own home, and they've got a little bit of support. So I think it's just stability for them as well. It makes them feel safe, and they're just so much happier.
Very nice. So that was Emma talking about her experience of home sharing. So as you heard, you know, started off her daughter, not settled into uni life. It does happen. Not everybody is set out for that. So needing a much quieter environment to live in, and then being joined by Emma and Emma starting her home sharing journey as well. benefiting from that. But the bits I really love well, there's a few things in there. She said it several times, it's a win-win, you know, it's both people benefit from the arrangement. She said it as well about the key in the lock, you know, that reassurance, knowing there's going to be somebody there, you know, when they finish work, when they come in at the end of the day, having that as well. So important. But the little things, you know, the taking the dog for the walk, filming it as you're going around, I think is lovely. And just being able to go into the garden and feed the birds and be able to watch from the window. So to see those little things that give people joy is really important, I think, to home share. So that's Emma. So we would love to have had her live, but unfortunately she had to work today. Otherwise she would have either been doing all that live. So I think that brings us really to time for some questions. I don't know if there's any online or if anybody in the room has got any questions. I will be staying around as well. Yes.
I just wondered what happens when people are starting to need more, because if like a match lasts for 7 years, there may well have been a change.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've just had experience with trying to organize things for my parents, and they didn't really want anything, but maybe the people who are open to home share are also more open to change. But what does home share do when maybe one of the home sharers says, look, you know, this person needs more than I can do?
All the way along the line, and one of the things I always say is, you know, it's about the agreement between two people that have the capacity to make that you know, arrangement. So so in case people didn't hear the question, it was, what if the householder needs more support as time goes on? So I mean, there's a couple of things they can do. The home sharer might be willing to provide more support, which is great if they do. It might mean that they need to look at bringing elements of care in alongside the home share package. There is also, as we heard in Emma's situation, that if there is the space within the house, actually having 2 home sharers. So it doesn't have to be one home sharer and one householder. You could have 2 home sharers and a householder. So there's some different models available there, and equally that goes the other way around, because 2 of the home share arrangements that Emma was in, she was actually supporting a couple. So she was, so it wasn't a single person living on their own, it was actually a couple, which can happen. The home share model is really flexible, I think, is one of the good things about it. So as long as people are happy and they can enter into that agreement and that arrangement in what they're comfortable in delivering and comfortable in receiving, then it's absolutely fine, as I think will be monitored by the home share coordinator. So there are options there in looking at what is suitable. And
I've actually got a few questions, but I'll try and catch at the end. But the first one is, it's in 3 areas of Wales.
Yeah.
Are there plans to increase the breadth of that?
We would love to see it rolled out everywhere, basically. The pilot was the pilot funding we had was for 3, so that's why we kind of stopped in a bit at 3. But yeah, we have had interest from other areas within Wales. Had some interest from South East Wales and some other areas as well, that we'll be exploring, and it'll be a slightly different arrangement, because obviously my role was funded by the Welsh Government, so moving forward will be a slightly different arrangement with shared lives. But yeah, we want to see it everywhere, and that's why, particularly in England, we've been able to get expansion funding to develop that. That's why we're running 2 programs ourselves in the northeast and northwest of England, because there was a big gap in the map. So we were like, we will develop our own programs and then float them off as individual organizations when they're sustainable. So we've got, you know, in terms of our vision, is to see it rolled out everywhere by different providers. So yeah, that's the easy answer to that one.
Tim, we've got a question from Rhiannon Smith. Would this be something that would be an option for people living with dementia?
Yeah. Well, as Emma mentioned herself, I think at least one of the people that she supported was living with dementia. I think actually it was two of them. But yes, I mean, it all depends how that is being displayed, and that's something that the home share is comfortable with supporting in that environment. But yeah, I think in one of our annual reports that we did that actually, I think the majority of householders did have some form of dementia. So yeah, so it is something that is fine. So again, it's about what that looks like really, if the home share is comfortable with that. Any more questions on screen or in the room? Yes.
Could you give us some idea of cost? I'm involved with a co-housing, intergenerational co-housing. And you've mentioned things like there's a fee.
Yes.
And then there has to be agreement about living expenses. And I was thinking about the energy crisis at the moment.
Yes.
Older people may need more heating on, younger, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the utilities bills, that is entirely up to them to agree that together. So that could be different from arrangement to arrangement, but the home sharer would, the home share coordinator would help facilitate that discussion to say, well, what's reasonable, what's okay. Some providers would give a suggestion of what the split should be, but that side of it needs to be worked out with those and supported to come to that agreement. In terms of the fees, again, it differs from area to area, but as a rough rule of thumb, the home sharer usually pays somewhere between about 160 to 200 pounds a month. So in some of them, if you're looking at London, it might be higher, but roughly that's the rule of thumb. So somewhere around that arrangement. With householders, as I said in the presentation, sometimes some providers don't charge the householders at all. If they do, it's around about 80 to 100 pounds a month. So when you consider what they might be paying out already in things like cleaning, gardening, dog walking, it soon adds up. So but yeah, it's up to local providers to look at their environment, to look at the locality and what costs are in order to set those fees. But as a rule of thumb, that's what they are. Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it.
Got one in the room?
Sorry. What's the thing we can cover so much?
Council tax, good question. We most local authorities take it on a case-by-case basis. So the issue of losing the single person discount, which is one of the questions people do raise. So most local authorities won't give us a blanket decision about being exempt from it. What we would love is that a local authority would say, if you're part of a home share arrangement, then you would keep your discount. At the moment, you have to go case by case to the local authority to get that. Most of the time they do. Where they don't, again, it's about going back to the home share and say, would you pay the difference? So if they're losing that 25% discount or whatever, is the home share happy to do that? Ultimately, it's still up to individuals as to whether they want to enter into a home share or not. If it didn't go the way and they didn't get the discount, would they still go into it? That's kind of up to them. If the home sharer didn't want to pay the difference, so there are a few factors in it. But what we really want is to get a bit of a precedent, really, so that we can get somewhere. If we could get one local authority to agree to an exemption, then we can kind of use that to hopefully encourage other local authorities to follow suit. But at the moment, it's case by case. If it's turned down, go to the home share and say, will you pay the difference, so that they're not out of pocket. Okay.